Good morning, second graders. Today is Wednesday, May 20th. Yesterday we read this story called The Pheasant and the Kingfisher. And if you remember, it was a myth about how something came to be. And that something was the pheasant and the kingfisher. So we learned about how the pheasant and the kingfisher came to be. Do any of you remember that cool French word I showed you yesterday? That means why. I actually said it wrong yesterday, so I Googled it to see how to pronounce it. So my French was wrong. Yesterday I called it pourquoi. Today it's pourquoi, because I had to Google it to see how to pronounce it. So I had to Google how do you pronounce, and I had to spell it, and it said pourquoi. So if you guessed pourquoi, like I said yesterday, you are right, but it's actually pronounced pourquoi. So that's what it looked like yesterday. I showed you that under the camera, and it's how something comes to be in nature. And so this one was how the camel got its hump. So in nature, the pheasant and the kingfisher, how they came to be. Okay, and the myth used realism and fantasy to help tell you how the birds came to be. So today we are actually going to do an activity with realism and fantasy, and I'm going to I chose a few sentences from the story and a few events in the story, and I'm going to hold them up, and you are going to tell me if you think they are realism or fantasy. And before we do that, I'm just going to remind you of this chart that we showed yesterday. Remember, realism, it can happen, okay, and fantasy, it cannot happen. So those are our two words today. What events in the story really could happen in real life, and what events in the story could not ever happen in real life. Okay, now, normally if we're in school, you shout out answers, and I know we don't get to be together in school right now, so I'm going to hold it up, and I want you to shout it out from home, just like you were participating in the story spot. Okay, so I made a chart. It looks like this. So we have the title at the top, Pheasant and Kingfisher, and on this side is realism, and the other side is fantasy. Okay, so I'm going to hold up a sentence and I'll read it to you, and then I want you to shout out if you think it's realism or if you think it's fantasy. Okay, so the first one I am going to come up with is this one. Men set up camp. Do you think that's something that could happen in real life, or do you think that that's fantasy? Shout it out. Okay, if you said realism, you're right. So I'm going to see if I can hold my chart plus tape this on in the correct column all at the same time. This is a little tricky when you're doing it on a video camera. Okay, might not be straight, but you get the idea. Well, we'll try to straighten it out a little bit, otherwise it won't all fit. Okay, there we go. Men set up camp. They could do that in real life, couldn't they? Okay. All right, the next one, let me see here. Men have powers. Do you think that's realism, or do you think that's fantasy? Okay, it's fantasy. Now, sometimes our dads and our and our husbands like to think they have powers, but they really don't. That's just fantasy. They wish they did. Wouldn't it be cool to have powers? That would be cool. All right, so that's fantasy. Okay, the next one. People fight over what belongs to someone. Okay, does that happen in real life? Do people fight over what belongs to someone? Do you and your siblings ever fight over whose is what? Yep, that's real. Okay, so we're going to put that right here under realism. Okay, now the next one is arms turn into wings. I'm pretty sure. What do you think? Shout it out. And if you guessed fantasy, you are right. Our arms do not turn into wings, no matter how much we wish we could fly. All right, how about this one? Two men go hunting. Is that something that's realism or fantasy? Can that happen or not? Take a guess. Shout it out. All right, if you guessed realism, you are right. So we're going to tape that right here. My goodness. All right, there it is. Not very straight, but you know what? That's the way it goes. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, next. Let's see here. Men make spears made of bamboo. Could you make a spear made of bamboo? That's a type of grass. Could you do that? Yeah. They did it right in the story, didn't they? They made it into spears. Okay, so there we go. I'll hold it up so you can see it a little bit better. All right, last two. What do you think? Enemies turn into stone. Do you think that could really happen? Nope. Sure would be nice, wouldn't it? Okay, and the last one. Two men become birds and fly away. And hopefully you knew that was fantasy. I don't think we can ever become birds and fly away. But in the myth and in the story, that's how they said that men turned into the pheasant and the kingfisher, and that's how they came to be. So hopefully you got all of those correct. That was just a fun little activity to do at home since we can't do it together at school. Okay? All right. So if you need to go get your reading packet today, we're going to talk about your assignment. So you can pause the video and go get your reading packet. And we're going to look at your matrix. On Wednesday, it says to cut apart the sentence strips on page 9 of your reading packet. Use page 10 to paste the strips in the order that they happened in the story. You may need to watch Tuesday's video again. Okay, so you are going to, on page 9, there's page 9, cut apart these 7 strips. Okay, and they're sentences, they're events that happened in the story. And you are going to put them in the correct sequence. And remember, if you put something in the correct sequence, that means you put them in the correct order that they happened in the story. Okay, so I'm going to read those to you. But what you're going to do is you're going to cut them apart on page 9. And then you're going to use page 10 in your packet to paste them on. And it even says that at the top. Use this page to paste the sentences from page 9 in the order they happened. Okay, so this is the page you're going to glue them on. Now, don't start gluing until you have them all laid out in the correct order, and then you can glue them down. And here's another tip for you. Sometimes when you put something in the correct order or in the correct sequence, it's easiest if you start with the first at the top, and then go ahead and find what you think is the last one and put that at the bottom, and then figure out the middle once you've done the first and the last. Okay, sometimes that's a tip for you to figure it out a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to read those to you right now. Remember, don't glue them down until you put them in the right order. And it says, this one says, Book and Barid turned into birds and flew away. I don't think that's going to happen first. Okay, remember, you might have to go back on my video and rewatch the story again, and that's okay. The second one says, Book and Barid hunted, sang, danced, and made spears from bamboo. The third one says, Book and Barid made camp where bamboo spears grew. And the next one, Book and Barid painted themselves. Their enemies came after them with spears. Book and Barid used their powers. And the last one says, Najalambo warned them that people were angry. Okay, so go ahead and figure out which events, these 7 sentences, which order the events happened in the story. Okay, that's your assignment for today for your must-dos for reading. And then I created a seesaw activity for you to go ahead and take a picture of it once you have it all in the correct order and you've glued it down. Take a picture of it and then record yourself reading me the events in the correct order. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Good luck with that. That'll be fun. All right, so next we are going to do math. So go ahead, pause the video, grab your math packet. We're going to correct yesterday's math and go ahead and do today. Oh, wait, was it yesterday that we did the problem solving? Or was that the day before? Whatever, grab your math packet and we will get going on math today. Mrs. Lunning figured it out. It was Monday we did the problem solving lesson, so we didn't have anything to correct. yesterday we did the check my progress. So yes, we do have something to correct. So go ahead and grab that if you need to correct that with me. So grab that and then the rest of your math packet so that we can do the next lesson, which is lesson 4 today. All right, so this is your Check My Progress, page 611. And these are the answers to your vocabulary check. 60 minutes is 1 hour. 30 minutes is 1 half hour. 60 seconds is 1 minute. A digital clock uses only numbers to show time. An analog clock has an hour hand and a minute hand to show the time. So hopefully you are able to do those. And number 6, 7, and 8, 10 o'clock. Remember when the minute hand is on the 12, we say it's o'clock and that's 00. This one was 4:30. The minute hand was on the 6 and we say that's on the 30, half past 4. And then this one was o'clock again, 2 o'clock. And on the back, you had to draw the hands on each clock. So this was half past 8 is the same as 8:30 with the minute hand on the 6 and the 8 in between, the hour hand in between the 8 and the 9 because it's half past, it's halfway to 9 o'clock. And then number 10, or 11 o'clock. So you know o'clock means when the minute hand is on the 12. And then this time the hour hand points right to the hour because on o'clock it's a brand new hour. So the hour hand points right to the correct number. And number 11, half past 1. There's that half past again. So half past is the same as 30. So your minute hand should have been on the 6. And your hour hand should be halfway between the 1 and the 2 because it's halfway to 2 o'clock. And it's half past 1. Number 12 and 13. Write the time, half past 7 and 1 o'clock. And your brain builders, I helped you kind of set it up so that you could draw a picture. So you should have had 12:30. So he had 3 classes in a row. The first 2 are 2 hours long, and his third one was 1.5 hours long. So his first class was at 7. So 2 hours later would be 9 o'clock, 7, 8, 9. And then 10, 11, that's his second class, that's 2 hours long. And then the third class was an hour and a half. So 11 o'clock plus 1 hour is 12 o'clock, plus 30 more minutes, which is half an hour, gave you 12:30. And number 15, this one we set up again. The class bell rings every 30 minutes. The first one rings at 8:30. What time will the fourth bell ring? So we set it up again. Every 30 minutes. So if his first one's at 8:30, 30 minutes later is 9 o'clock, 30 minutes after that is 9:30, and the fourth class would be at 10 o'clock. So you should have gotten 10 o'clock. Okay? All right. So today we are starting lesson 4, time to the quarter hour. Okay, quarter hour. We haven't done that yet, and I don't think that that's something that you learned in first grade either. So this should be something pretty new for you today, okay? Now, we've talked about how 4 quarters equal $1. Well, in a clock, there are 4 quarters that equal 15 minutes on a clock. So it tells me today, and you should be on page 613 and 614, so hopefully you have that page out so you're ready to learn with me. It says, have students fold a paper plate or a circular piece of paper in half. Then fold it again in quarters. Unfold and look at the fold marks. On the clock above, we're going to put the numbers and we are going to tell time with it. So I took a paper plate right out of my cupboard, and the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to fold it in half. We'll do it the long way, so that we have a 12 o'clock and a 6 o'clock, and I'm just folding it in half and putting a crease in it. Okay, so that's in half. Okay, we had a whole plate and we folded it equally in half. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not. Hopefully you can. Okay, so that was half. So if the 12 was up here and the 6 would be down at the bottom, this would be 30 minutes past or halfway to the next hour. Okay? And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half and I'm going to fold that in half again. And maybe if you have a paper plate, you can even do this too. So I'm going to fold it in half again. So now I have folded it in a quarter. Can you see that? Okay. So first it was in half, and then it's in half again, which makes it in a quarter. So when I open up my paper plate, it's going to look like there's a big plus sign in the middle of it. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you what that looks like. You see this crease right here? So we're going to pretend to make a clock out of this. I should have made it a little bit smaller on a smaller piece of paper so that you could see it better, okay? But we're going to do this. 12 o'clock, okay? And then 6 o'clock. And I'm going to put my dot right in the middle. Let's see where my creases are. Right here. Here's my dot. And how many of you can kind of see the creases? There's a crease, and there's a crease. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my clock. So 12 o'clock is here, 6 o'clock is here, and then 3 o'clock is on the line of my plus sign, and 9 o'clock is on this side of my plus sign. Okay, can you see that? Hard to tell a little bit, isn't it? Too bad. Okay, so this time between 12 and 3, we say is 15 minutes. Okay, and then between the 3 and the 6 is another 15 minutes, and the 6 and the 9 is another 15 minutes. Between the 9 and the 12 is the fourth 15 minutes. Okay, just like on here. All right, so when we count 5, 10, 15. So that's the first quarter of the hour. And then another quarter, 5, 10, 15. So these 15 minutes are the next quarter of the hour, because 15 minutes plus 15 minutes equals 30 minutes. And then there's the third quarter of an hour, 5, 10, 15. And the last quarter, 5, 10, 15. Okay, and that's why we say that 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 equals 60 minutes. Because 15 and 15 is 30, and 15 and 15 is 30, and 30 plus 30 equals 60. Okay, just like 4 quarters are in $1, 25, 50, 75, $1. 4 15-minute chunks equal an hour on a clock, because it's 1/4 of the circle. 1 out of 4. Okay? It's kind of hard to explain when we're not in person and we can't sit and practice over and over. But I'm going to have my clock here, and I am going to say that it is 2 o'clock. Okay? Now, when you talk about quarter hour, that's usually when we talk about quarter after an hour or quarter till another hour. Okay, so how many of you have heard it? Oh, we go to lunch at 11:45. Okay, well, when we say that, that means it's 11:45 and each quarter. So here's a quarter between the 12 and the 3, and another quarter between the 3 and the 6, so now it's 2:30, and another quarter between the 6 and the 9, now it's 2:45, and the last quarter turns into a new hour between the 9 and the 12. So those are your 4 quarters, okay? And the ones that you really need to focus on when we talk about quarter time to the quarter hour is 15 and 45. Those are the ones that you really need to focus on when we think about quarter hour and telling time to the quarter hour. So if we have it 3:15, then our 3 and our hour hand and our minute hand, see the 15 right there? We say this is 3:15. And we often say it's quarter after 3. I'm sure you've heard that said before, haven't you? And if we're talking about quarter to something, okay, now it's 3:45, and we can also say there's 15 minutes before it turns into 4 o'clock. So then we say it's 3:45. And that's what that means, because in 15 minutes it turns into 4 o'clock. It's a little tricky, so let's do another one. We're going to say that it is 7:15. Okay, and that's the same as 7:15. We can also say a time that's like, let's do 10:45. Okay, so it's on the 45, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Okay, so we say it's 10:45. But in 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's going to go up and it's going to turn into 11 o'clock. And that's just going to take some practice over and over and over. And I bet your parents will be happy to help you with that, because we aren't able to be in class where we can do example after example after example. This would have taken us a couple different days to do this lesson. So it's okay if it's kind of hard right now. You will get it, all right? Just remember, when you talk about quarter hours, you need the 15 for quarter after, and you need the 45 for quarter to. And then this is always 30. So even though this is still the second quarter, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, we still say this is 10:30, because that's what the 6 means, is 30. Okay, so we're just going to say the directions tell us to choose a time and write it on the clock. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pick 12:45, because that was always the time that we came in from recess at school. So what would 12:45 look like? Okay, well, you know the minute hand's going to be on the 9, because that's 45. Okay, and it's almost 1 o'clock, so we would say it's 1:45 or 12:45. They mean the same thing. And that's the time we're going to draw on our clock and the time we're going to write on our clock. So 12:45. See how they make these cool dotted lines? Just like the folds on my paper plate, right? That's what the paper plate looked like too. And if I separated the paper plate out and I did a 1 here and a 2, and then I do in this 15 minute, I'd put a 4 and a 5, and this one I would put a 7 and an 8, and this one I'd put a 10 and an 11. So sometimes when you draw a clock, it's easiest if you start with the 12, then the 6 is right opposite of it, and then when you fold it again in the quarter, then the 3 is over here to the right, and the 9 is opposite to the left. Okay, so we're going to draw 12:45 on our clock. So we know that our minute hand is going to be right on the 9, and I always like to draw my minute hand first when I draw a time on the clock. So there's my 9, and 12:45 means it's 1:45. So I'm going to put my minute hand, or my hour hand, in between the 12 and the 1. And so it's quarter. Oh, we have to do 1/4, not 1/4. My mistake. Oh, darn. My beautiful example isn't really that beautiful of an example, is it? I thought we got to pick whatever we wanted. All right, well, instead, let's do 8:15. And that was about the time that we would be at breakfast. Okay, so we'll do 15 on the 3. That's 15. That's 1/4 and 1/4:08. And our hour hand can point right at the 8. All right, so 1/4:08 is the same as 8:15. Sorry about that. I wanted to do my beautiful example of lunch recess, but that's okay. That would have been 1/4, not 1/4. Mrs. Lunning needed to read better, didn't she? So there it is, 8:15. Okay, so on the back at the top it says, you can show time to the quarter hour. There are 15 minutes in a quarter hour. There are 4 quarters in an hour. So here we go, and it even tells you at the top, this is 1 o'clock. Okay, you can trace that. And then it moved 15 minutes. See this yellow part's a quarter of the hour. And then it moved to 1:15, that's 1/4. Then it moves the second quarter, which is 1:30. And then it moved the third quarter, which is 1:45. And if it moved one more quarter, it would be 2 o'clock. So your assignment today is to tell what time is shown and write it down. Okay, all you have to do is look at the clock and write it on the digital clock. Notice the minute hand and where it's at. All right, look up here if you need help. Okay, and at the bottom at 4:15, where is the minute hand? Explain. So the minute hand should be on what number if it is 4:15? Go ahead and tell that to a family member. And that's your math for today. So good luck, and I hope you do well on your sequencing activity for the pheasant and the kingfisher, and you just have 3 problems in math plus the talk math. I know that'll be easy for you today. And then you can have the rest of the day to do whatever you would like. So enjoy your day, second grade, and I will be back with you again tomorrow. Bye.